Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a great week out there so far. I got you an update on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. We are expecting some pretty active weather. Some severe storms are likely going to happen across portions of Oklahoma and North Texas, and we will talk in great detail on that. We'll break down everybody else in the lower 48, and we will also give you an update on the tropics. We'll give you kind of some brief information on what's going on with Nigel. Nigel has an extremely large eye, and we'll talk a little bit on that, but won't get super detailed. But we will give you some updated information on the potential for this coastal low off the coast of the southeast that will eventually form. We have some pretty high confidence that there will be some kind of system off the coast of the southeast. It's just, is it going to be tropical in nature, subtropical? What is it going to be? Just a coastal low? Regardless, I think this will bring impacts to somebody along the East Coast. So we'll break that down, and then we'll give you some updated information on what's going on out there in the central Atlantic. But I can tell you, confidence has definitely dropped on anything developing out there. We're starting to get to the time of the year, the time of September, second half of September, where what we call the MDR, main development region, the tropical Atlantic, begins to slowly shut down for the season. And then our eyes really shift to the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, maybe off the coast of the southeast for any development. But we'll cover all this in this video. Thank y'all for understanding about not dropping a video yesterday evening. Definitely just need a breather. I'll probably drop a video this evening, but there's a chance I might not. But regardless, I will get a few evening videos out this week, especially if this system off the coast of the southeast becomes a bigger deal. That's for sure. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it. And I promise you, other folks are praying over it also. So let's get rolling. Let's hope our clicker is working. It is. So we got Nigel right here. All right, we'll give you an update on the tropics first. I do want to mention that. Nigel right here, it's trended a little bit weaker in kind of the future term of this storm. It's not forecast to become a major hurricane anymore. The eye is very large, very oddly large. We'll zoom into Nigel here in a second, but I mean, you can see it here. I mean, the center of the storm right here, it's just an extremely large eye to this storm. We got a lot of energy down here in the tropical Atlantic. It's definitely just clustered up over the span of hundreds of miles. There's nothing really dominant or anything down here. Just it looks like one giant tropical wave, but just a lot of energy down here. Will something get organized and maybe develop into a depression? We got to find that out. And then we got some pieces of energy over here across the lower 48. This energy right here, this little short wave, will spark severe weather for Oklahoma and North Texas today. But what I want to really talk about first is this stalled frontal boundary right into here. You notice you got a lot of white, blues, yellows, and greens. This indicates showers and storms over Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of the southeast, just convection in general. But if you notice right into here, not a whole lot of anything going on. Some high clouds working their way through areas of Alabama and Georgia, but a beautiful air mass over areas of the southeast, the eastern U.S., and just kind of the east central portion of the country. We're waking up to low 60s at worst and just the 50s, even some 40s out there. So it definitely is a nice early fall air mass across the eastern U.S. for sure this morning. So that's what's going on right now. There's no, we're not going to talk about Lee or Margot anymore. They are pretty much history at this point. But let's discuss the threat for a coastal low, some kind of subtropical, tropical system right off the coast of the southeast as we work our way a little bit later into the week. So we're off this. First off, I will mention this. Here it is, that 30% chance now. And I could see this upgrading to a 40% chance. This will likely go to orange sometime, maybe at the 8 a.m. update here in about an hour. But basically sometime in the next few updates, I expect this to go to a 40% chance. It might not, but we'll see what happens. But I got some pretty decent confidence it will. When we got this, which is the 70% chance to develop in the next 7 days, you notice this is not increased. I honestly think it'll go back to an orange, which is a 60 to a 40% chance. I think this will decrease sometime today. We'll see what happens. And we got Nigel, which is that 85-mile-per-hour storm. So I mentioned we would talk about this first, but I'm kind of all over the place. So let's briefly mention Nigel first, and we'll get this out of the way. This will probably be the last time I mention Nigel. There's no point in really talking about Nigel out here. He's just doing his thing, not really bothering anybody. But like I said, the surface of the ocean, the fish out here in the North Atlantic. But very large eye, as you can tell. It's just kind of interesting to look at. I want to show you guys. I mean, look how large Nigel's eye is. Now, I'm sure all of this is not cleared out to the point where, you know, if you just happen to be a whale in the middle of this eye, you can look up and see the stars in the sky or sunny skies or anything like that. I'm sure it's not that clear, but it is interesting how the center of circulation is this large. You got some convection popping off on all sides of Nigel. Just a Category 1 hurricane, 85 miles per hour. It's forecast to strengthen into a Category 2, but we'll make that turn fully north and then northeast, and then you know, maybe bring some impacts potentially to, I don't know, maybe some big swells to Ireland, but it's looking like it's going to make the full turn north and fully dissipate and not really bother anybody in Europe. But let's talk about the potential for this system off the coast of the southeast. Now, it has not developed. We'll start off this evening. We'll run through all the model guidance here pretty quickly, but in the same time detailed. So what's going on is, say if you're in North Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Mississippi, you get the point. You're waking up this morning to a beautiful air mass, right? It feels nice out there. It's crisp. That is the cold front that worked its way through, 12 to 24 hours ago. That same cold front is stalling out right down here. So if you notice, nothing but white, no precipitation up here. Down here, you got a bunch of green that kind of just meanders over southern portions of Florida. So we'll keep this going in motion. We'll get into tomorrow morning. Okay, we get into Thursday morning. Notice you're starting to see a lot more green, even spots of yellow, orange, and red on your screen. That is energy beginning to brew off the coast of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, the southeast. Okay, eventually this will get its act together enough to where this pretty much full-fledged turns into an actual low pressure, a low-level spin out there. Now, is this going to be subtropical in nature, meaning it has a lot of dry air wrapped in it, kind of the colder elements, or is this going to be more tropical in nature? Well, the GFS is the most aggressive model. It says this will go full-fledged, not full-fledged, but this will have more of those tropical elements to it. And this is the GFS, the latest one, and it keeps strengthening with this system. If the GFS is correct, we will have most likely Ophelia, which is our next name, the O name, because we've already went through Margot, Nigel, and the next name is the O name, which is Ophelia. And then the next name after that is Philippe, which is the P name. Okay, so is this going to be a named storm? Well, we keep this going. We get into Friday morning, guys, and we got a big plume of moisture off the coast of the southeast. We got a pretty, just this low pressure that's strengthening. The further this number goes down, this indicates a strengthening storm system. We start to make our way into Friday evening. We got 1,000 millibar low pressure off the coast of the southeast. Not too far off the coast of the southeast either. What I want you to watch here is look at this big plume of moisture being tossed into the Outer Banks and extreme eastern areas of North Carolina. It's what models have really been consistent on, all models, is that there's going to be like a large northern fetch of moisture that gets basically slingshotted into areas of like North Carolina and the Mid-Atlantic. And that is basically the beginning portion of your weekend too. So it's definitely going to affect weather for your weekend. I really think it is. Now, what the GFS does is it continues to strengthen this, keeps most of the heaviest rain off the coast of like the Delmarva, eastern North Carolina. And then it really starts to deepen this low pressure. I mean, we're getting into Saturday morning. We're getting into Saturday afternoon, and it has a sub 990 millibar low pressure. This is an all-out, what I would think would be based off this run of the GFS, an all-out tropical system. And this is not surprising. This happens a lot. Sometimes these things get boosted off the Gulf Stream, off the coast of the southeast, that area of very warm water. And we get a lot of surprises in this area and in the Gulf of Mexico. So it wouldn't catch me off guard, I tell you that. But do not be surprised if this takes a name. But let's keep going. One thing with the GFS, though, thankfully, is this turns into a strong tropical storm. Or subtropical storm off the coast of the Carolinas. But the good thing is is it moves on out to sea. Now, it doesn't move abruptly out to sea. This could be very close to even the northeast, but if I was to show you the northeast here, it would not move inland. I've already looked, but it's just one model run. Then this heads on out. But it's a very interesting scenario, it really is. Now, the European, the Icon, kind of agree with one another. They don't agree with the GFS, but they do agree with the fact that we're going to get a storm system. We get into Wednesday morning. We're getting into Thursday morning. Here it is. First day of fall, you get a big plume of moisture right off the coast of the southeast. This is spinning somewhat, very broad circulation spin out here. We're getting into Friday morning. Here it is. There's the low pressure, big fetch of moisture off the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia. All right, and this basically starts to work its way in to areas of extreme eastern South Carolina, like the Myrtle Beach area, Wilmington, up the coastline to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And this really starts to kind of throw some moisture into those eastern areas. So we get into Saturday morning. Here it is. It's potentially what it could look like. This is a weaker low pressure indicated off the Euro compared to the GFS, but it does throw a lot of moisture into areas of the Delmarva, the Mid-Atlantic. And you keep this going here, beginning into Saturday afternoon. This is beginning to strengthen. You see this number beginning to drop. So I would say it's ticking a little towards the GFS as far as a stronger low pressure. But I can tell you one thing, the Euro has a lot more dry air worked into this low pressure, but does make an actual landfall as a coastal low subtropical storm sometime this weekend. It's hard to nail down a time period, but the Euro says sometime Saturday night into Sunday morning, and associated with the actual low pressure would bring some rains into the Carolinas. A lot of people are asking me, because I'm a big football guy, what's going to happen with the South Carolina-Mississippi State game? What's going to happen with this game in the Carolinas? What's going to happen with the Florida State-Clemson game? We're just not quite sure, because we don't know where the plume of this moisture is going to move into. I can tell you one thing, we'll probably have a lot more high confidence here by the time we work our way into Thursday, and I could start answering some of those questions a lot better. But that's the latest Euro. The Icon, what does it show? Same thing. Same thing as on both those other models. Big plume of moisture gets basically slung into extreme eastern areas of North Carolina, a very small section of South Carolina. But, areas like Columbia, Charlotte stay relatively dry. But the Icon follows more so of the GFS with a stronger system, deepens this below a 1,000 millibar low pressure storm, and makes landfall as a 998 millibar low pressure storm system into the southern sections of the Outer Banks, or right where the southern portion of the Outer Banks meets, not the Outer Banks, if that makes sense, into eastern North Carolina as a subtropical storm, some kind of storm system. But if you look way up here, and I'll go on and actually look at a little bit further up for you folks, look at this big plume of moisture for you folks in the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. This would deliver a really soggy Saturday PM, AM. We got to figure out the timing, but man, more rain would get slung into areas that do not need rain in southern New England. So we got to watch this. Okay, this could turn into a flooding event. Now, this is what the GFS shows, the more aggressive model. All right, there's a lot of dry air nearby trying to get wrapped into the system, but this system develops such a tight core, such a tight moisture bubble that it pretty much has dry air wrapped into the broad area of the circulation, but there's enough moist air near this low pressure that this fully kind of compacts itself into a very small moisture bubble. So I would argue this is still maybe subtropical, but it's borderline tropical, a tropical system. And then this moves over, and then as it moves north, if there is that brief period where this is a tropical system, it is going to be very brief, and then we'll probably quickly lose those tropical characteristics as it moves north and you get a lot of dry air wrapped into this system. Now, the Euro, I think, is just a full-fledged non-tropical low, subtropical low. Gets a lot of dry air wrapped into it, as you can tell. Dry air wraps all the way in and touches that low-level circulation. And this certainly has a lot more dry air wrapped into it. And it's just because you got a weaker system, can't protect itself as much. It's not as strong, so it's not popping off probably as much convection, things like that. But look at this big moisture plume getting pushed all the way into the Mid-Atlantic. So, winds for this, we don't know, but here's what the GFS shows, or the most aggressive scenario. Shows those, 30 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts in the extreme eastern areas of North Carolina, coastal regions of Maryland, southeast Virginia, into areas of the Delmarva. But, if the GFS was to happen, even though it's the most aggressive scenario, it is certainly staying out to sea. Now, the European just shows kind of a breezy, gusty day into maybe Friday night into Sunday, working your way up the coast in that time and those days up, further up in time frame. I need to get my words together. But keeps most of the gusty winds along the coastline and just off the coastline, as you can tell, with those kind of 20 to 30, 35 mile per hour wind gusts. Rainfall from this, as you can tell, this is the blend of all models, but keeps most of the worst rain confined to the coastal regions. I would argue, watch out for the mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva region in eastern North Carolina. If I was to say one area would get the most rain, it would be that area. Now let's talk about this really quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's a huge just area of energy. You would think, eventually something's going to form, right? Well, not necessarily. This is a lot of energy out here in the central Atlantic, but you still need one piece of energy to become dominant, become a tropical depression, gain that low-level circulation, and eventually develop into something. And the reason that models are struggling with developing anything is because of what we call a tut. You'll notice this little feature that comes down right into here. This creates a lot of shear. Does the opposite as kind of what that the outflow that we called it, the anticyclonic flow. This comes down and like whiplashes these systems and basically creates shear and changes the winds aloft from different directions and basically just messes up any kind of chance for this gaining some kind of low-level circulation. It just can't because there's too much changing in winds. So we keep this going here, and here it comes, low pressure trying to develop. But here comes this tut, what we call we call it short for tut in the weather world, but it's basically an upper level low that comes down, creates a lot of shear, and here's a low pressure trying to develop. But this really interferes, this kind of area of blue interferes and basically creates a lot of shear, which then dry air gets in, and then nothing can really get developed down here. And if you look at the latest GFS from this morning, it's just having a hard time. There's a lot of shear in this region right into here. So basically, it keeps trying to back up and form some energy off this other area of showers and storms a little bit further east in the tropical Atlantic, but it just never can. And eventually, as we get into maybe next week, something tries to get going, but maybe something sneaks into the eastern Caribbean like 9 days from now. But man, outside of that, I can tell you between now and the next 10 days, guidance has really dropped off and kind of support for anything developing. Same thing with the European. European really never develops anything. Takes the piece of energy on the eastern end, which has always been that piece of energy that we need to watch out for, which if you look right here, technically that area that has a chance to develop really is still emerging off North Africa. So honestly, all this stuff right here was never really expected to develop. It's the area actually a little bit further east, but those pieces of energy do have a chance too. But I mean, you look at the Euro, nothing ever develops. Now you do have this like 12 days out, but it just that's too far out to really talk about, guys. It really is. It's way too far out. So in a nutshell, anything in the short to medium term that we were kind of expecting to develop here within the next 7 to 10 days, chances have dropped. Now they could increase. So I'm sorry, this was the European right here. So this is the rest of the European run. Does nothing through 10 days. Nothing anymore. So let's talk about the weather back home. As you can tell, you got the trough. You got this cold front boundary like this. And this will continue to sink a little bit further south, maybe. Bringing a little bit more dry air to our folks in North Florida, but we're going to watch for some energy to eventually develop right into here. We got a piece of energy right into here that's going to spark some strong to severe storms in this area today. We got some moisture right here in this region, and outside of that, just a lot of nice dry air that's going to dominate most of the eastern U.S. today and create a really fall-like feel out there. But as far as what's falling right now, you got a pesky low pressure that's getting blocked in, so you're getting a lot of rain that's kind of getting thrown back into Maine, even some rain falling in northern sections of New York State. Big plume of light to moderate rain falling in areas, even some storms in areas of Iowa, falling in areas of Iowa, northern Illinois, southern sections of Wisconsin. Some rain is going to greet you guys in Chicago very shortly if it isn't already. Some clusters of showers and storms in Oklahoma, northern sections of Texas this morning. This will re-energize and create some severe weather. And speaking of that severe weather, I could see this changing a little bit today, so don't hold me to what I'm showing you. The next update comes out in about an hour, hour and a half. But as of now, there's just a slight risk. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. This thing does include Tulsa, Oklahoma, down to Wichita Falls. Pretty much includes the Woodward area also. There is a tornado risk, a 2% risk of a tornado in this green area within 25 miles in a given location. We'll see if any of this increases. This does include the Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman regions. Wind, 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's around 55 to 60 miles per hour. And hail has a chance to be the biggest threat today. Not only do you have in the yellow area a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter, in the black outline region with the black dashes going in between it, that means you have a hatched risk, which means you have a significant risk of large hail, which means, well, you have a chance of significant hail, I should say it. That's a much better way to say it. So that means you have also a 10% risk to see significant hail, which the Storm Prediction Center considers hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger as significant hail. Excessive rainfall outlook could get 1 to 2 inches of rain in this area of Oklahoma. So there is a slight risk of excessive rainfall in this region right here. We need to watch out for this today. Along with these storms could produce a lot of rainfall. The southeast, nothing really to speak on out here. You're being dominated by that dry, stable air. The only area basically that you need to watch out for some storms is Orlando to Tampa, down to the Space Coast, point south down to Miami. This is basically where the area where the front has not cleared, so you're going to get a lot of moisture. Everybody has a chance of showers and storms down here throughout the afternoon, evening, but everybody else pretty quiet. As we're getting into the overnight hours, we'll watch whatever's left over of these storms in Oklahoma that will push into southern sections and southwest sections of Missouri, northwest sections like the Ozark region of Arkansas. So we'll wake up to some rains, probably up around Fayetteville. Outside of that, not a whole lot. The northeast, we're dealing with this pesky low. So if you're up here in northern and northwestern and western Maine, you're going to be dealing with some showers and just light rain most of the day. This could pivot itself back into Vermont and New Hampshire. So especially Vermont, you know, if you're up here in kind of the central and northern portions of Vermont, northern sections of New Hampshire, you're going to be dealing with just some showers, just kind of a rainy, kind of fall-like day up here. Who doesn't like an occasional kind of rainy fall-like day? It's definitely a vibe that I certainly enjoy. We don't get those days until like November around here, but of course it's definitely different up into the northeast. But definitely a cooler day where it's raining, and you'll be dealing with even more rain today. And then eventually overnight tonight, it'll start to dry out and you won't be dealing with any rain anymore. The south central U.S., this will be the active period for sure. You know, these storms will probably reinitialize as early as this afternoon. I mean, in fact, you know, by the time you get into 1 p.m. Central Time, you already got storms firing up here. So where we can get warming, the thermodynamics will support large hail. Thermodynamics meaning dew points, your higher moisture levels, your higher CAPE levels associated with those higher dew points and low-level lapse rates and things like that, higher temperatures, just things like that are going to support large hail. So I definitely need to brush up on my talking on severe weather. You know, I became what I felt like an expert on it, talking about it all spring and summer. And we haven't had to talk about it much over the last few weeks because we've been talking about the tropics, but definitely some big storms in kind of, I would say, west central Oklahoma, central Oklahoma, and north Texas today. And these will form. It'll be a tricky forecast, but then we'll watch the first round. But then the second round this evening could be the area that really produces that chance of large hail. Maybe a tornado risk down here, but I really think the afternoon and evening stuff in northern Oklahoma will be the bigger threat for tornadoes. But a closer look at this, some afternoon convection does get going, 1 to 3 p.m. Some of these storms could produce a tornado kind of in north central and northern areas of Oklahoma. You can't rule it out down here near the Red River region area either. And north Texas, now near Wichita Falls, places like that. Large hail is a big deal today. This first area will move out. We could have the initiation of more storms up here, kind of northwest of Tulsa, right in this region, just south of the Kansas-Oklahoma state line into Oklahoma. Well, like I always mention, these short-range models are not gospel. This is not the grand conclusion, but, I would watch out for some more storms that could fire up in northern areas of Oklahoma, another cluster, and this could produce a tornado kind of north of Oklahoma City, and moving into Tulsa. And then we'll watch these storms down here, 7, 8, 9 p.m. They kind of form and ride along the Red River. And just south and just north of it, if you're a community in these regions, watch out as we're getting closer to the sun setting. And then after the sunset, we'll see if these storms kind of can keep some steam to them as they work their way through the evening and work their way eastward. And then by the time I think that we get into the wee hours of the morning, it'll be interesting. We might wake up to a nice little swirl here in areas of southwest Missouri, but we could still be dealing with some rain. Could be waking up some stormy conditions here in eastern Oklahoma, maybe northeast Texas, and western Arkansas. Now, if you look at the updraft velocity swath, it does indicate some rotation with some of these storms, even with these storms down here where there's not a 2% risk. But I can tell you that 2% risk can broaden. It can extend down here on the next update. Things can change, but where you see these highlighted colors, that indicates where the HRRR model is saying, hey, some of these storms may spin a little bit. If you look at the blend of all models as far as rain, 1 to 2 inches of rain could fall in and around the Tulsa area. Maybe around an inch of rain is possible, a little under in Oklahoma City. But if you live in eastern Oklahoma, northeast Oklahoma, kind of extreme southeast areas of Kansas, and then especially southwest areas of Missouri, northwest areas of Arkansas later tonight, you could get a soaker later tonight. North central U.S., you'll be dealing with these rain showers. These eventually will take over Chicago throughout the morning. They could weaken, but you still could have some light rain falling in northern Indiana. Southwest areas of Michigan for sure could get some sprinkles and light rain, maybe moderate at times, and just some scattered about downpours and kind of Nebraska, very isolated extremes in southern areas of Iowa, northern areas of Missouri. And could have another cluster of rain that gets going later tonight in southern Iowa and northern Missouri. And just could wake up to some showers well west of Minneapolis and Minnesota tomorrow. My folks out west, about the only thing we'll watch is about the same pattern as yesterday. Could get some showers, downpours to get going in areas of Nevada, northern Utah, kind of southwest Wyoming, and most of Colorado could see a chance of some pop-up showers and storms. And then we're going to have another system that swings into the Pacific Northwest. Could bring some showers for Seattle, some snow for the Cascades, and in areas of the Rockies. And definitely bring some showery kind of conditions and some rain. And look at this nice little swirl that you're waking up to in northern Idaho, extreme northwest Montana tomorrow morning that could bring some rains. And look, we're starting to see more and more of that blue showing up on our map. Temperatures today will remain cool in the northern sections of New England because of the cloud cover and rain, but only 60s, maybe 70 degrees in New York City, 60s in Boston. Just getting to that cooler time of the year for sure. I mean, 70s, maybe low 80s for the mid-Atlantic, low 80s, mid 80s for the southeast with low humidity. And the further you work west, the further deeper you get into warmer weather. But nice day for the Great Lakes region, the Ohio Valley. It's definitely a little bit cooler, for sure, cooler than average out here in the Pacific Northwest, and definitely cooler than average in the Southwest, where temperatures are a good bit below average. But the high plains and the northern plains are, getting a little bit warmer, 70s and 80s, but definitely warm in Texas, but nothing groundbreaking or anything like that. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a great Tuesday.